They say the truth will set you free, but nobody warns you about the devastation it leaves in its wake. My name is David Patterson, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered that the woman I'd loved for 15 years, the mother of my 2 children, had been living a double life that would ultimately destroy everything we'd built together. This isn't a story about dramatic confrontations or movie-style revenge. It's about the slow, methodical unraveling of a marriage, the quiet moments when you realize the person sleeping beside you is a stranger, and the cold, calculated steps you take when you understand that the life you thought you had was nothing more than an elaborate performance. I'm not here to paint myself as a saint. I worked long hours as a project manager for a commercial construction firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I traveled sometimes, missed a few school plays, forgot an anniversary once. But I loved my wife, Emily. I loved our kids, Jake and Olivia. I thought we had something real, something worth fighting for. I was wrong. What you're about to read isn't fiction. The names have been changed, some details altered to protect the innocent, mainly my children. But the core of this story, the betrayal, the discovery, the legal battle, and yes, the revenge, all of it happened. I'm sharing this because I wish someone had told me what to look for, what red flags I ignored, and how the family court system actually works when your world falls apart. Maybe it'll help someone else see what's coming before it's too late. Or maybe it'll just serve as a cautionary tale about trust, about the person you think you know better than anyone else in the world. This is the story of how my marriage died, how I almost died with it, and how I found the strength to fight back when everything seemed lost. The first time I should have known something was wrong was a Tuesday in late September, about 18 months ago. I remember because Jake had just started middle school and Emily had been acting different for weeks. Not dramatically different. That's the thing about affairs, they start in the margins, in the small spaces you don't pay attention to. She'd joined a gym that summer. I need to do something for myself, she'd said, and I'd encouraged her. Why wouldn't I? After 15 years of marriage, 2 kids, and the daily grind of suburban life, everyone needs an outlet. She'd been going religiously, 4 times a week, sometimes 5. She'd lost weight, started dressing differently, bought new underwear. All things that, in hindsight, scream infidelity, but at the time just seemed like a woman taking care of herself. That Tuesday, I came home early from a job site inspection that had been canceled. The superintendent had called in sick, and rather than waste the afternoon, I decided to surprise Emily, maybe take her to lunch. Our house sat in one of those cookie-cutter subdivisions outside Charlotte, the kind with an HOA that fines you if your grass is too long. I pulled into the driveway at 11:30 in the morning, expecting to find Emily doing laundry or working on one of her craft projects. Her car was in the garage. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked through the kitchen, calling her name. No answer. I checked the living room, the back deck. Nothing. Then I heard it, her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. She never left her phone behind. Never. I glanced at the screen and saw a text notification from a contact labeled Melissa Jim. The message preview read, "Can't wait to feel you again. Last time was incredible." My stomach dropped. I stood there, staring at those words, trying to make them mean something else. Anything else. Melissa was Emily's workout partner, or so I'd been told. They'd met at the gym, bonded over spin class or yoga or whatever. I'd never met her, never even seen a picture, but Emily talked about her sometimes. I picked up the phone. No password. She'd never had one before. We'd always had that kind of trust. I opened the message thread. What I found made my hands shake. Months of messages, hundreds of them. But they weren't from any Melissa. The contact name was a cover. The messages were explicit, detailed, planning meetups and discussing times when your husband will be at work. There were photos, too, the kind that made me want to throw the phone across the room. The sender's real name was buried in the conversation history. Tyler Brennan, a personal trainer at her gym. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Emily appeared, fresh from a shower, wearing a robe, her hair wet. She froze when she saw me holding her phone. "David, what are you doing home?" I held up the phone, my voice surprisingly steady. "Who's Tyler Brennan?" The color drained from her face. For a moment, just a moment, I thought she might deny it, might have some explanation that would make this all go away. Instead, she did something worse. She got angry. "You went through my phone? How dare you invade my privacy like that?" It was textbook deflection, and it worked for about 3 seconds before the absurdity of it hit me. "Your privacy? Emily, you've been sleeping with someone else." "It's not what you think." "Then what is it? Explain these messages. Explain the photos." She couldn't. She stood there, her mouth opening and closing, searching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, she sat down at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. "How long?" I asked. "6 months," she whispered. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of coming home to me after being with him, of kissing our kids goodnight while living a secret life. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, Emily already turned away from me, breathing in that careful rhythm people use when they're pretending to sleep. The kids were down the hall, Jake probably still reading under his covers with a flashlight, Olivia actually asleep because she was young enough that her world hadn't fractured yet. The thing about discovering infidelity is that it doesn't just rewrite your present, it rewrites your past. Every late workout, every shower immediately upon coming home, every time she'd pulled away from my touch, all of it played back in my mind with new subtitles. The affair had been 6 months, she'd said. 6 months of lies, 6 months of her coming home from being with him and kissing our children goodnight, 6 months of sitting across from me at dinner tables and pretending. I didn't sleep. I sat there in the dark and I thought about what came next. They say you should lawyer up immediately, that you should protect yourself, that you should assume the worst. I didn't do any of that. Not yet. Instead, I did what I've always done when faced with a complex problem. I gathered information, I documented, I planned. The next morning, Wednesday, I called in sick to work. Emily seemed relieved when I told her, probably thinking I was going to spend the day wallowing. She got the kids ready for school, kept glancing at me like I was a bomb that might detonate. I just sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching her perform the role of mother, of wife. "We need to talk," she said after the kids left. "About what happens now." "What do you want to happen?" She sat down across from me. She'd put on makeup, more than usual. I wondered if she had plans to see him today. "I don't know, I didn't mean for this to happen, David, it just... Don't." I held up a hand. "Don't tell me it just happened. 6 months doesn't just happen. 6 months is a choice you made every single day." "You're never here," she said. And there it was, the deflection, the blame shifting. "You're always working, always traveling. The kids barely see you. I barely see you." I'd worked long hours, sure. I'd traveled for projects. But I'd also come home every night I could. I'd made it to most of the kids' events. I'd thought we were building something together. Apparently, I'd been building it alone. "So you dealt with that by sleeping with your trainer." "It's more than that," she said. Tyler actually listens to me. He sees me. When's the last time you really looked at me, David? I looked at her then. Really looked. The woman across from me was a stranger wearing my wife's face. When's the last time you were actually here to look at? She stood up. I'm going to the gym. We can talk more later when you're ready to have an actual conversation. You're going to see him. I'm going to work out. She grabbed her keys. I need to think. I let her go. I sat there and listened to her car pull out of the driveway, and then I went upstairs to our bedroom and I started looking. The thing about people having affairs is that they get sloppy. They think they're being careful, but they're not. Emily had deleted texts from her phone, but she hadn't thought about receipts. I found them in her car later that day, crumpled in the center console, stuffed in the door pocket. Hotels in Charlotte, twice in Asheville. Restaurants I'd never been to. A jewelry store receipt for a men's watch I'd never seen. She'd bought him gifts with our money. I photographed everything. I created a folder on my laptop, password protected, and I started building a timeline. Every receipt had a date. I cross-referenced them with my work calendar, with Emily's text messages to me on those days. Working late, I'd written on one day. Miss you, she'd replied. The hotel receipt was from that same night. I didn't confront her with any of it. Not yet. Thursday, I went back to work. I had a project review meeting that I couldn't miss, and honestly, I needed the normalcy. My team could tell something was off. I'm usually more engaged, more present. But I got through it. I made decisions about concrete and rebar and scheduling while my marriage crumbled in the background. Emily was cheerful when I got home. She'd made dinner, actually cooked, which she hadn't done in months. The kids were happy, chattering about their days. I played along. I asked Jake about his math test. I listened to Olivia talk about her friend's birthday party. I looked at Emily across the table and I smiled when appropriate. This is nice, Emily said after the kids went upstairs to do homework. Us? Like this? Yeah. I've been thinking, she said, about what you said. You're right. I made choices. Bad choices. But maybe we could try counseling? Work on things? I studied her face. She seemed sincere. Maybe she was. Maybe she'd realized what she was about to lose. Maybe Tyler had told her he wasn't leaving his girlfriend. I'd found that out too. The guy was cheating on someone else to be with my wife. Maybe she was just scared. Maybe, I said. She smiled. Actually smiled like I'd given her a gift. I could make some calls tomorrow. Find someone good? Sure. That night, she initiated intimacy for the first time in months. I couldn't do it. I told her I was tired, stressed from work. She looked hurt, but she didn't push. Friday, I called a lawyer. His name was James Whitley, and he came recommended by a guy I'd worked with who'd gone through a divorce 2 years earlier. I met him during my lunch break at his office in Uptown Charlotte. Tell me what's going on, he said, after we'd settled into his conference room. I told him everything. The discovery, the messages, the receipts, the timeline. I showed him the documentation I'd started compiling. Whitley looked through it, nodding occasionally. He was in his 50s, gray hair, wedding ring on his finger. He'd probably seen this story 1,000 times. You've been thorough, he said. That's good. North Carolina is one of the few states where you can sue for alienation of affection. That's a civil suit against the person your spouse had an affair with. Given what you've shown me, you'd have a strong case. I don't care about suing him, I said. I care about my kids. Understood. In terms of custody, North Carolina courts consider the best interest of the child. An affair doesn't automatically disqualify someone from custody, but it can be a factor, especially if you can demonstrate a pattern of behavior that affected the children's well-being. What do I need to do? Keep documenting. Don't do anything that could be construed as aggressive or controlling. Don't move out of the house. That can be seen as abandonment. Be the stable parent, and decide what you actually want. I want my kids. Full custody? I thought about Jake and Olivia, about splitting them between houses, about them spending half their time with Emily and whatever guy came next. Yes? That's difficult to get unless there's abuse, neglect, or substance issues, but we can push for primary custody with you. What does your wife do for work? She doesn't. She stopped working when Jake was born. Whitley made a note. That could work in your favor. You're the financial provider. You have stable employment. But it also means you'll likely be paying substantial alimony and child support. I don't care about the money. You say that now. He closed his folder. Here's my advice. Don't tell her you've seen a lawyer yet. Keep gathering evidence. Stay calm. Stay present with your kids. Document everything. When you're with them, what you do with them, how involved you are. If she's still seeing this guy, document that too. Give me a call in a week and we'll talk about next steps. I left his office feeling like I'd actually done something, like I had a plan. That weekend, Emily suggested family time. We took the kids to the park, got ice cream, played mini golf. She was trying, I could see that, or maybe she was performing again. I couldn't tell anymore. Sunday night, after the kids were in bed, she brought up counseling again. I found someone, she said. A therapist who specializes in couples. She has an opening Tuesday afternoon. I have a site meeting Tuesday. Can you reschedule? I looked at her. Can you stop seeing Tyler? Her face went blank. I told you I'm not Emily. I kept my voice level. If we're going to try, you need to actually try. That means no contact with him. None. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. I'll tell him it's over. When? Tomorrow. I'll tell him tomorrow. I nodded. I didn't believe her, but I nodded anyway. Because the thing about gathering evidence is that you need to give people enough rope. And Emily was still tying knots. The thing about pretending to believe someone, it requires a performance on both sides. Emily thought she was convincing me she'd end things with Tyler. I let her think that. For 3 weeks, I watched her play the role of repentant wife while I documented everything she thought I didn't see. She'd started volunteering. That's what she called it anyway. Hurricane Eliza had torn through the coastal counties 2 weeks before I found those messages. Category 3, made landfall near Wilmington, left thousands without power and homes. The kind of disaster that brings out the best in people, or in Emily's case, provides excellent cover for the worst. I need to do something meaningful, she told me over breakfast on a Saturday morning, 3 days after our kitchen confrontation. I've been so focused on myself, the gym, my mistakes. I want to help people who actually need it. Jake was eating cereal, scrolling through his phone. Olivia was drawing something with markers at the other end of the table. Normal Saturday morning scene. Emily had gotten good at performing normalcy in front of the kids. The relief organization needs volunteers, she continued. They're staging supplies at a warehouse off Highway 74, then trucking them to the coast. I could help sort donations, pack boxes, a few days a week. I looked up from my coffee. Which organization? Carolina Cares. They've been all over the news. She met my eyes with practiced sincerity. I know the timing seems. I know you might think this is just me trying to look good. But those people lost everything, David. I want to do something that matters. The thing was, she was right about one part. Carolina Cares was legitimate, a regional nonprofit with a solid reputation. They'd been coordinating relief efforts since Eliza made landfall. I'd seen their trucks on the news, volunteers loading pallets of water and canned goods. What Emily didn't know was that I'd already installed tracking software on her phone. James Whitley had recommended a guy, former police detective, now did private investigation work. $200 and 15 minutes of having her phone while she showered, and I could see every text, every call, every location ping. I think that's good, I said. You should do it. She blinked. She'd expected resistance, maybe an accusation. Really? People need help. If you can give your time, you should. I watched something flicker across her face. Relief, maybe guilt, maybe just recalculation. She smiled. Thank you. I start Monday. Monday afternoon, I pulled up the tracking app during a site meeting. Emily's phone showed her at the warehouse address she'd given me, an industrial park off Highway 74, exactly where Carolina Cares had their staging operation. She stayed there for 4 hours. Came home tired, wearing a Carolina Cares volunteer t-shirt, talking about how many boxes of supplies they'd sorted. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, same thing. Thursday, her phone pinged at a different location. A motel off I-85, 30 miles from the warehouse. She was there for 2 hours in the middle of the afternoon. I sat in my truck in the construction site parking lot, watching the blue dot on my screen, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not surprise. I'd expected her to keep seeing Tyler. But the motel felt different than the affair itself. She'd promised to end it. She'd cried, apologized, talked about counseling and rebuilding trust. And 3 weeks later, she was in a motel room while wearing a volunteer t-shirt for disaster relief. The performance was the thing that got me. Not just the affair, the elaborate construction of virtue around it. Friday, I told my site supervisor I needed to leave early. Family thing. He didn't ask questions. I'd been with the company 9 years, never took unexpected time off. I drove to the industrial park off Highway 74 and found the Carolina Cares warehouse. Big metal building, loading docks, their logo painted on the side. Emily's car was in the lot. So were about a dozen others, volunteers probably, and staff. I parked across the street at a gas station and waited. She came out at 5:30 with a group of other volunteers. They stood talking in the parking lot for a few minutes, then dispersed to their cars. Emily got in her sedan, checked her phone, and pulled out of the lot. I followed her. She didn't go home. She headed east on Highway 74, toward the coast. I stayed 3 cars back, the way you see in movies, except this was real, and my hands were shaking and I had to remind myself to breathe normally. 30 minutes later, she pulled into a truck stop off the highway. Not the motel, a truck stop with a diner and gas pumps and a parking lot full of semis. She parked near the back, away from the main building. I pulled into a spot by the diner, far enough away that she wouldn't notice my truck but close enough to see her car. She sat there for 10 minutes. Then a white panel van pulled up next to her. No markings, no company logo, just a plain white van. A man got out, not Tyler. I'd seen enough photos of Tyler Brennan by now to recognize him. This guy was older, maybe 45, wearing jeans and a Carolina Cares polo shirt. He walked to Emily's passenger window. She rolled it down. They talked for a minute. Then he went back to the van and opened the rear doors. Emily got out of her car and opened her trunk. The man started carrying boxes from the van to her trunk. Cardboard boxes, the kind I'd seen on the news footage of relief supplies. He made 3 trips. Emily stood there watching, then handed him something. Cash, looked like, though I couldn't be sure from this distance. They talked for another minute. Then Tyler Brennan pulled up in a black pickup truck. I felt my stomach drop even though I'd expected him. Even though I'd known this wasn't about volunteering or redemption or helping disaster victims. Seeing him there, seeing Emily's smile when he got out of his truck, seeing them kiss while boxes of relief supplies sat in her trunk, it made it real in a way the phone tracking hadn't. Tyler opened his truck bed. The older man helped him transfer the boxes from Emily's trunk to the pickup. All 3 of them worked together, casual and efficient, like they'd done this before. Like it was routine. When the boxes were loaded, Tyler and Emily got into his truck together. The older man got back in the van. Both vehicles pulled out of the truck stop lot, heading in opposite directions. Tyler's truck went east, further toward the coast. The van headed back west, toward Charlotte. I sat in my truck, trying to process what I'd just seen. Emily wasn't just having an affair. She was stealing disaster relief supplies. Her lover wasn't just a personal trainer. He was part of some kind of theft operation. And that older man in the Carolina Cares shirt was either a corrupt volunteer or someone posing as one. They were robbing people who'd lost everything in a hurricane. I pulled out my phone and started taking notes. Time, location, vehicle descriptions, license plates. The same methodical documentation I'd been doing for 3 weeks, except now it wasn't just about an affair and a custody battle. This was federal. I didn't go home. I called Emily and told her I had to stay late at the site. Emergency with a concrete pour. Might be midnight before I got back. She sounded distracted when she answered, music playing in the background. Wherever she was with Tyler, she wasn't worried about me. Instead, I drove east on Highway 74, following the route Tyler's truck had taken. I didn't know exactly where he'd gone, but the coast wasn't that big. The disaster zone was concentrated around Wilmington and the beach communities. I found them 2 hours later in a town called Charlotte, about 20 miles from the coast. Tyler's black pickup was parked behind a closed furniture store, along with 2 other trucks and a car. Lights were on inside the building even though the front windows were dark. I parked down the street and walked back, staying in the shadows. The building's rear door was propped open. I could hear voices inside, see movement through the gap. I took out my phone and started recording video. Through the door, I could see Tyler and Emily, along with 3 men I didn't recognize. The boxes from the truck stop were stacked on tables. Tyler was opening them. Bottled water, canned food, first aid supplies, batteries. All the things people needed after a hurricane. All the things people had donated to help disaster victims. One of the men was counting cash. Another was loading supplies into different boxes, unmarked ones. They were repackaging donated relief supplies to sell on the black market. I recorded for 5 minutes, getting clear footage of faces, of the supplies, of the money-changing hands. Then I backed away slowly and returned to my truck. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear. From rage. From the sheer calculated cruelty of what I'd just witnessed. Emily hadn't just betrayed me. She was betraying people who'd lost their homes, their belongings, maybe their loved ones. She was stealing from disaster victims to fund her affair with a personal trainer. I sat in my truck and called James Whitley. It was almost 9 at night, but he answered on the second ring. "I need to know who I call about federal disaster relief theft," I said. "David, what's going on?" "I need to know tonight, and I need it documented properly, not just for divorce, for criminal charges." There was a pause. Then, "Tell me everything." I sat in my truck for another 20 minutes, watching through the windshield as Tyler and the older man loaded the last of the boxes into a white panel van. Emily stood to the side, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for an Uber, not participating in federal theft. The casual nature of it all, that's what got me. They weren't nervous. They'd done this before. The thing about criminals is they get comfortable. Routine breeds carelessness. I had enough video. 3 separate clips showing the transfer, the repackaging, Emily's face clearly visible in 2 of them. Tyler's in all 3. The older man, I needed to know who he was. The Carolina Cares shirt could be legitimate or costume. Either way, someone at that organization was dirty. They finished loading around 4:30. The older man drove off in the panel van, heading south. Tyler and Emily got into his truck, a black Dodge Ram I'd seen parked at our house twice when I'd driven by during volunteer days. They headed north, back toward Charlotte. I didn't follow them. I knew where they were going. The Comfort Suites off I-77, room charged to Emily's credit card. The one she thought I didn't know about because she'd opened it in her maiden name 6 months ago. I knew about it. I knew about all of it. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and connected to my phone's hotspot. The warehouse address was 2847 Industrial Park Road, Charlotte, NC. A quick property search showed it was owned by Coastal Storage Solutions LLC, registered in Delaware. The registered agent was a law firm in Wilmington. Dead end for now, but traceable. I uploaded the videos to 3 separate cloud accounts, sent copies to my personal email and James Whitley's encrypted server. Then I opened a new folder on my desktop and started a timeline document. September 28th, 4:15 p.m., Charlotte, NC. Subjects: Emily Patterson, Tyler Brennan, unknown male, 50s-60s, Carolina Cares shirt. Activity: transfer of relief supplies from legitimate Carolina Cares truck to personal vehicles. Repackaging of supplies in unmarked warehouse. Estimated value: $3,000 to $5,000 based on visible items. Bottled water cases, medical supply boxes, non-perishable food. Evidence: video documentation, 3 clips, 8 minutes total. Photographs, 47. GPS tracking data from Emily's phone. I saved the document and closed the laptop. My hands were shaking again, not from fear, but from something else. Anger, maybe, or vindication. Emily hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She'd stolen from people who'd lost everything. Hurricane Eliza had killed 14 people. Thousands were displaced, living in shelters or with relatives, waiting for relief supplies that Emily and her boyfriend were selling for profit. The affair I could have survived. People recover from infidelity. They rebuild, co-parent, move on. This was different. I drove back to Charlotte in silence. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't call James Whitley, though I wanted to. The lawyer in me, the part that had learned to think like one over the past few weeks, knew I needed to be careful. Federal theft, disaster relief fraud, conspiracy. These weren't civil matters. Once I reported this, Emily wouldn't just lose custody, she'd lose her freedom. And I needed to be sure. Not sure that she'd done it. I had video proof. Sure that I was ready for what came next. Jake was 12. Olivia was 9. They'd see their mother arrested. They'd hear the charges. Their friends' parents would talk. The local news would cover it. Charlotte woman, arrested in hurricane relief theft scheme. I pulled into a gas station outside of Fayetteville and called my brother. David, Ryan answered on the second ring. Everything okay? I need you to do something for me. Don't ask questions yet. A pause. All right. If something happens to me in the next few days, if I get arrested, if there's an accident, anything, I need you to go to my house. In my office, bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, there's a red folder labeled Insurance Documents. It's not insurance documents. Take it to James Whitley. His card is inside. Jesus, David, what's going on? I'm going to tell you, but not on the phone. Can you come to Charlotte this weekend? I can be there tomorrow. Saturday's better. Bring Rachel and the kids. Make it look normal. Family dinner. You're scaring me. Good. I'm a little scared too. I watched a semi pull into the diesel lane. Emily's involved in something bad. Worse than the affair. I have evidence, but I need to make sure the kids are protected before I move forward. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. He's a high school teacher in Raleigh, married 16 years, 3 kids. The stable one in our family. Protected how? Custody, character witnesses, people who can testify that I'm the primary parent, that the kids should stay with me when this goes public. When what goes public? Saturday. I'll explain everything Saturday. He agreed. We talked logistics. He'd arrive around 2, stay for dinner, leave Sunday morning. Normal family visit. Emily wouldn't suspect anything. I hung up and sat in the parking lot, watching people pump gas. Regular people. People whose wives weren't criminals. People whose marriages ended in mediation, not federal investigations. My phone buzzed. Text from Emily. Done for the day, heading home. Want me to pick up dinner? I stared at the message. The casual domesticity of it. The performance. She was probably still at the hotel with Tyler, naked in bed, texting her husband about dinner like she'd spent the day sorting canned goods for disaster victims. Sure, whatever you want. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Chinese, okay? Your usual. Fine. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and started the truck. 2.5 hours back to Charlotte. I'd beat her home by 30 minutes if she actually picked up food. Longer if she didn't. The drive gave me time to think. To plan. James Whitley had mentioned alienation of affection lawsuits. North Carolina was one of 6 states that still allowed them. You could sue the person who destroyed your marriage. But that was civil court, money damages, public humiliation. This was criminal, federal, and it changed everything. FEMA would investigate, the FBI maybe. Carolina Cares would be audited. If the organization was legitimate and Emily had infiltrated it, they'd cooperate with authorities. If it was corrupt from the top, the whole thing would collapse. Either way, Emily was finished. And Tyler, the personal trainer who'd been sleeping with my wife, who'd convinced her to steal from hurricane victims. I didn't know his full story yet. Criminal history, financials, whether he'd done this before. But I'd find out. I merged onto I-40, heading east. The sun was setting behind me, casting long shadows across the highway. In the rearview mirror, everything looked dark. I got home at 7:15. Emily's car wasn't in the driveway. I parked in the garage, grabbed my laptop bag, and went inside through the kitchen door. The house was quiet. Jake was at soccer practice until 8. Olivia was at my sister's house for a sleepover. Emily had arranged it. So we can have a date night, she'd said Wednesday morning. I'd agreed, knowing she actually wanted the house empty so Tyler could come over. He wouldn't. Not tonight. I'd make sure of it. I went upstairs to my office and locked the door, opened the laptop and pulled up the tracking software. Emily's phone showed her at the Comfort Suites, stationary. She'd been there since 5:10. It was now 7:17. I opened a new browser window and navigated to the FEMA Office of Inspector General website. There was a hotline for reporting fraud, waste, and abuse. I read through the instructions. Anonymous tips were accepted, but they preferred detailed reports with evidence. I had evidence. Video, photographs, GPS data, financial records showing Emily's new credit card and cash withdrawals. Dates and times, locations, names. But I didn't submit the report. Not yet. Because the thing about revenge, real revenge, the kind that sticks, is timing. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, cursor blinking on the FEMA fraud reporting page. The form wanted details, dates, locations, estimated dollar amounts, names of individuals involved. I had all of it. 3 videos, 47 photos, GPS coordinates, license plate numbers. Everything a federal investigator could want. But I didn't hit submit. Not yet. The thing about revenge, real revenge, not the hot-blooded kind you see in movies, is that it requires patience. Timing matters. You don't just burn everything down the moment you have the match. You make sure the fire spreads exactly where you want it to go. I closed the laptop and checked my phone. Emily had texted an hour ago. Running late. Don't wait up. The same message she'd sent dozens of times over the past months. Each one probably sent while she was with Tyler, laughing about how easy it was to deceive the boring husband who worked too much. I texted back, "Okay, love you." 2 words that tasted like ash. Thursday morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. My project manager, Dennis, sounded genuinely concerned. I never missed days, even when Jake had that stomach bug that went through his whole class. "Take care of yourself," Dennis said. "We've got it covered." I drove to a FedEx office in Gastonia, 30 miles from Charlotte. Paid cash for 2 hours in a private room with a computer and printer. I created 3 identical USB drives, each containing every photo, every video, every receipt and bank statement I'd collected. Then I printed hard copies of everything, 2 complete sets, organized chronologically in manila folders. The woman at the counter, maybe 60 with reading glasses on a chain, rang up my order without comment. 247 pages at 11 cents each. The USB drives were another $45. "Big project?" she asked, making conversation. "Insurance claim," I said. She nodded sympathetically. "Hurricane?" "Something like that." I spent Thursday afternoon in James Whitley's office, spreading the evidence across his conference table. The photos of Emily and Tyler loading boxes, the video of them repackaging supplies, the bank statements showing deposits to Emily's personal account, an account I'd discovered she'd opened 6 months ago, right when the affair started. James picked up one of the photos, studied it, set it down. Picked up another. "Jesus Christ," he said finally. "This isn't just adultery, this is federal theft. Probably wire fraud too if they're moving money across state lines." "I know. You could report this right now. FBI, FEMA, state police. They'd be arrested within 48 hours. "I know," I said again. James looked at me over his reading glasses. He was maybe 55, gray at the temples, with the kind of face that had seen every variation of human stupidity and betrayal. "But you're not going to," he said. "Not yet." "No." "Why not?" I picked up one of the videos on my phone, the one where Emily and Tyler were laughing while they loaded stolen medical supplies into Tyler's truck. Her hand on his arm, his hand on her waist. "Because when I do this," I said, "I want to make sure it destroys everything. Not just her, not just Tyler. The whole operation. Everyone involved." James was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You want to let them get deeper," he said. "More theft, more evidence, more people involved. Make the case so big that federal prosecutors can't ignore it." "That's part of it." "What's the other part?" I looked at the photos spread across the table. Emily's face caught in profile, smiling at Tyler while they committed a federal crime. "I want her to think she got away with it," I said. "I want her to feel safe, confident, and then I want to watch it all collapse." James picked up his coffee, took a sip, set it down carefully. "I'm a divorce attorney," he said, "not a criminal lawyer. But I know enough to tell you this. What you're describing is dangerous. If you wait too long, if something goes wrong, you could be accused of complicity. Knowing about a crime and not reporting it, that's a gray area. How long do I have? Legally? Hard to say. Days, maybe. A week at most before it starts looking suspicious that you knew and didn't act." I nodded. I'd figured as much. "There's something else," James said. "When this breaks, and it will break, it's going to be ugly. Federal charges, media coverage, community outrage. Your kids are going to see their mother arrested. They're going to hear what she did. Stealing from hurricane victims? That's the kind of thing that makes national news." "I know." "Do you?" He leaned forward. "Because I need you to understand. Jake and Olivia are going to live with this for the rest of their lives. Kids at school will know. Teachers will know. This will follow them." My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the table. "She made that choice," I said. "Not me. She chose to steal from people who lost everything. She chose to betray our family. I'm just making sure there are consequences." James studied me for a long moment. Then he gathered the photos into a neat stack. "All right," he said. "Here's what we do. I'm going to file the divorce petition tomorrow. Cite irreconcilable differences, nothing about the affair or the theft. Standard custody arrangement to start. We don't tip our hand. You continue documenting everything, but you set a deadline. 1 week from today, you report this to FEMA and the FBI whether you have more evidence or not. Agreed?" "Agreed." "And you keep those USB drives somewhere safe, not your house. Somewhere Emily can't access if she gets suspicious." "Already done." I'd put one in a safety deposit box at a bank in Rock Hill, South Carolina. One in my desk drawer at work, buried under old project files. One in Ryan's apartment, though I hadn't told him what was on it. James walked me to the door. In the hallway, a young couple sat in the waiting area, not looking at each other. The woman had been crying. "David," James said quietly, "one more thing. When this is over, when Emily's arrested and the case goes to trial and you have full custody, you're still going to be a father to 2 kids who just watched their mother go to prison. Don't forget that in all this." I nodded. But the truth was, I hadn't let myself think that far ahead. I was still stuck in the present, in the cold fury of discovery, in the meticulous planning of consequences. Friday night, Emily came home at 7:30. She'd been gone since 2 in the afternoon. Another volunteer shift with Carolina Cares. She found me in the kitchen, making dinner. Spaghetti with meat sauce, Jake's favorite. "Smells good," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. She looked tired. Guilty people always look tired. "Long day?" I asked. "Exhausting. We were sorting donations for 6 hours. My back is killing me." I stirred the sauce. "That's good of you. Helping out?" She smiled. Actually smiled. "It feels good to make a difference, you know? These people lost everything." I wanted to throw the pot of boiling water in her face. Instead, I smiled back. "I'm proud of you," I said. The lie came easily now. The weekend passed like a performance I'd watched 1,000 times. Saturday morning, Emily made pancakes, blueberry, Jake's favorite, and hummed while she flipped them. She asked about my week, laughed at something Olivia said about her teacher, touched my shoulder as she poured coffee. All of it choreographed, all of it hollow. I smiled back, answered her questions, helped Jake with his science project about erosion, took Olivia to soccer practice. The whole time, those USB drives sat in my truck's glove compartment like loaded guns. Sunday evening, after the kids went to bed, Emily curled up next to me on the couch. Some home renovation show played on TV. People discovering rot behind their walls, foundation problems, things that looked fine on the surface but were falling apart underneath. "I'm heading back down to Charlotte on Tuesday," she said, her head on my shoulder. "There's so much need still. We're setting up a distribution center for winter supplies, coats, blankets, heaters. More supplies to steal. More disaster victims to rob." "That's great," I said. "You're doing important work." She kissed my cheek. "Thanks for being so supportive." I wanted to vomit. Monday morning, I sat in my truck in the office parking lot and made the calls I'd been planning all weekend. First was the FBI field office in Charlotte. I asked for the public corruption and civil rights section, got transferred 3 times, and finally reached a special agent named Kevin Walsh. I kept it brief. Federal disaster relief fraud, theft of FEMA-funded supplies, black market sales, ongoing criminal operation. I had documentation, video evidence, financial records. Walsh's tone shifted from polite disinterest to sharp attention in about 15 seconds. "How recent is this activity?" "Ongoing. My evidence is from last Thursday. The subjects are planning another operation tomorrow in Charlotte." "And your relationship to the subjects?" I'd known this question was coming. "One of them is my wife. I discovered the affair first, then the fraud." Silence on the line. Then, "Mr. Patterson, I need you to come in today. Can you be here by 2? "I'll be there." Second call was to the FEMA Office of Inspector General hotline. Different person, same information, same reaction. They took my statement, my contact information, and told me an investigator would reach out within 24 hours. Third call was to James Whitley. "I'm doing it today," I told him. "FBI at 2. Already contacted FEMA OIG." "Good." James's voice was steady, professional. "Remember, you're a witness who discovered criminal activity and reported it. You didn't participate, you didn't benefit, you didn't delay unreasonably. You gathered evidence to ensure a solid case. That's the narrative. It's also the truth. Even better. Call me when you're done with the FBI. And David, don't let them pressure you into wearing a wire or participating in a sting. You're a civilian witness, not an undercover operative. You've done enough." The FBI field office was in a nondescript building off Billy Graham Parkway. Security screening, visitor badge, escort to a conference room on the third floor. Special Agent Walsh turned out to be mid-40s, graying hair, tired eyes that had probably seen every variation of human corruption. He wasn't alone. A woman introduced herself as Special Agent Lisa Brennan, no relation to Tyler apparently, and a third person from the FEMA OIG joined via video conference. I laid it all out. Started with discovering the affair, explained how that led me to track Emily's movements, detailed what I'd found at the warehouse in Charlotte. I showed them everything: the video of the repackaging operation, the photos of Tyler and the older man loading trucks, the GPS data showing Emily's repeated trips, the financial records showing unexplained deposits. Walsh watched the warehouse video 3 times. "You said there's another operation planned for tomorrow?" "That's what my wife told me. Charlotte again. She said they're setting up a distribution center for winter supplies. More likely stripping another relief shipment." Walsh made notes on a legal pad. "Do you know the location?" "No, she doesn't give me specifics." Brennan leaned forward. "Mr. Patterson, I need to ask, why wait until now to report this? You've had this evidence since Thursday." I'd rehearsed this answer with James. I wanted to make sure I had something solid. I'm not law enforcement. I didn't know if what I was seeing was actually illegal or just looked suspicious. I needed time to organize the evidence, make copies, consult with my attorney about the divorce implications. And honestly, I needed time to process that my wife is a criminal. Walsh nodded. "Understandable. The delay is minimal, and you've provided excellent documentation. This is more than enough for us to move forward." The interview lasted 2 hours. They copied all my evidence, took a formal statement, explained what would happen next. Federal investigation, coordination with local law enforcement, possible grand jury. They'd move fast. Disaster relief fraud was high priority, especially with Hurricane Eliza still in the news cycle. "We'll need you to maintain normal behavior with your wife," Walsh said. "Don't indicate you know anything. Don't confront her. If she suspects we're investigating, the whole operation could scatter." "How long?" "We'll have surveillance on the Charlotte location starting tonight. If they move supplies tomorrow, we'll intercept. 48 hours, maybe less." I thought about Emily sleeping next to me, kissing my cheek, making pancakes. 48 more hours of performance. I can do that. That night, Emily was packing for her Tuesday trip when my phone rang. Unknown number. I stepped out onto the back deck to answer. "Mr. Patterson, this is Rebecca Holt, investigator with FEMA Office of Inspector General." I walked to the far corner of the yard, out of earshot from the house. "I've been briefed by the FBI," Holt continued. "I'm coordinating with Special Agent Walsh on the investigation. I wanted to give you some context about what you've uncovered." "Okay." Carolina Cares is a legitimate organization. They've been a FEMA partner for 3 years. Good track record. But we've had reports of supply shortages in the Charlotte distribution area. Inventory not matching what was shipped. Recipients complaining about receiving less than documented. We couldn't pin down where the leakage was happening. Tyler Brennan and whoever that older man is. We're running background on Brennan now. The older man in your photos is likely Gerald Voss. He's listed as a logistics coordinator for Carolina Cares. Been with them about 8 months. If it's him, this makes sense. He'd have access to shipment schedules, inventory records, distribution locations. He could divert supplies before they ever reach the official distribution centers. 8 months. Emily's affair with Tyler started 6 months ago. Had Tyler recruited her into an existing operation, or had they started it together? What happens to Carolina Cares? I asked. If their coordinator is stealing from them, they're victims too. But they'll face scrutiny. How did this happen under their watch? What were their oversight mechanisms? Why didn't they catch it sooner? FEMA will probably suspend their partnership pending investigation. They'll lose funding, at minimum. Another casualty. Jobs lost, legitimate relief work stopped, all because of greed. Mr. Patterson, I want you to know, what you've done matters. Those supplies were meant for people who lost everything. Families sleeping in shelters, kids without winter coats, elderly people without heat. Stealing from them is about as low as it gets. I thought about Emily's righteous tone when she talked about helping people. The performance extended even to herself. Maybe she actually believed she was doing good work, that the theft was just a side benefit, victimless. When this breaks, I said, it's going to be ugly. Federal disaster relief theft? Yeah, the media will eat it alive, especially with the hurricane still fresh. People are angry about price gouging and fraud already. This will confirm their worst suspicions. After we hung up, I stood in the dark yard for a long time. Through the window, I could see Emily folding clothes, organizing her supplies for tomorrow. She looked focused, purposeful, dedicated. The thing about lies is they require constant maintenance. Every detail has to align, every story has to match, every performance has to be convincing. It's exhausting work. Eventually, something slips. A text message left open. A receipt that doesn't match the timeline. A husband who comes home early. Or a federal investigation that's been watching you repackage stolen disaster relief supplies. I went back inside. Emily looked up and smiled. Everything okay? Work call, project timeline stuff. On a Monday night? I shrugged. You know how it is. She went back to packing. I sat on the bed and watched her organize supplies she planned to steal from hurricane victims. My wife, the mother of my children, a stranger wearing a familiar face. What time are you leaving tomorrow? I asked. Early, 6 probably. Want to miss the morning traffic. 6 a.m. And somewhere in Charlotte, FBI surveillance teams were already setting up, waiting for her and Tyler and Gerald Voss to make their move. Less than 12 hours now. I helped her carry her bags downstairs, kissed her goodnight, and lay awake in the dark beside her, counting down the hours until everything she'd built, the affair, the theft operation, the performance of being a good person, came crashing down around her. The alarm went off at 6:30 Tuesday morning, same as always. Emily's hand shot out from under the covers, silencing it with practiced efficiency. I lay there in the dark, listening to her move through her routine. Bathroom, closet, back to bathroom. The shower started. Steam would be creeping under the door soon, carrying the scent of her shampoo, something expensive she'd switched to a few months back. I should have been exhausted. I'd barely slept, running through scenarios, wondering if Walsh and his team were already in position down in Charlotte. Wondering if this would actually work, or if something would go wrong at the last second. But I felt strangely alert, clear-headed, like I'd been holding my breath for weeks and was finally about to surface. The shower shut off. I heard Emily humming, actually humming, as she dried off. Getting ready to rob hurricane victims while our kids slept down the hall. I got up, pulled on jeans and a t-shirt. Downstairs, I started the coffee maker and got out the cereal boxes for Jake and Olivia. Normal Tuesday morning routine. Emily came down 20 minutes later in athletic wear, black leggings, a Carolina Cares t-shirt, running shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked fresh, energetic, ready for a day of volunteer work. "Coffee smells good," she said, pouring herself a travel mug. "Long day ahead?" "Probably. We're doing another supply distribution run to some of the harder-hit areas." She added cream, stirred. "I might not be back until late." "The kids have soccer practice at 4. I'll pick them up." "Thanks." She kissed my cheek, quick, perfunctory, the same kiss she'd given me every morning for the past few months. A performance. "You're the best." I watched her grab her purse and keys. "Drive safe." "Always do." The garage door rumbled open, then closed. Her SUV's engine faded down the street. I stood there in the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, listening to the silence. She was gone. I pulled out my phone and opened the tracking app. The blue dot that represented Emily's vehicle was heading south on I-77, right on schedule. I'd checked the app so many times over the past weeks that I could practically predict her route by now. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. Subject mobile, teams in position, will update. Walsh. Using a burner phone probably, professional to the end. I deleted the message and poured more coffee. Jake stumbled downstairs at 7:15, still half asleep. Olivia followed 10 minutes later, already talking about some project due in her art class. I made them eat breakfast, checked that they had their homework, drove them to school, went through all the motions of a normal Tuesday. Except nothing was normal. I got to my office by 8:30, tried to focus on work. I had a site meeting at 10, budget reviews after lunch, a contractor calling about delayed materials, the daily grind of commercial construction project management. But I kept checking my phone, watching that blue dot creep south on the highway, then east toward the coast. By 11, Emily had reached Charlotte. The dot stopped moving, settling at the location I recognized, the warehouse complex where I'd filmed them 3 nights ago. My phone stayed silent. No updates from Walsh. I didn't know if that was good or bad. The site meeting ran long. I stood in a half-finished office building, listening to the electrical subcontractor explain why he needed another week, and all I could think about was what was happening 200 miles away. Were they watching right now, waiting for the right moment? Or had something gone wrong? I checked my phone every 5 minutes. The blue dot hadn't moved. Lunch came and went. I couldn't eat. Just drank more coffee and tried to look like I was reviewing spreadsheets while my mind raced through possibilities. What if Emily had spotted the surveillance? What if they'd changed locations? What if Tyler or Gerald had gotten spooked and called it off? What if Walsh decided he didn't have enough for an arrest? At 2:15, my phone rang. Unknown number. I stepped out of my office into the hallway. "Hello?" "Mr. Patterson, this is Special Agent Walsh." His voice was calm, measured. "We've completed our operation. I wanted to inform you that Emily Patterson, Tyler Brennan, and Gerald Voss are currently in federal custody." I leaned against the wall. The hallway tilted slightly, then steadied. "Mr. Patterson." "I'm here." What happened?" "We observed them loading supplies from a Carolina Cares delivery truck into 2 personal vehicles, a pickup truck and your wife's SUV. The supplies included FEMA-marked water pallets, emergency food kits, and medical supplies. They drove to a separate location where they met with 3 individuals we've identified as buyers. We have video and photographic evidence of the exchange, including the transfer of cash." "You arrested all of them?" "All 6 individuals are in custody. We're executing search warrants on the warehouse, the vehicles, and several storage units we believe are connected to the operation." We've also frozen bank accounts associated with the suspects. I closed my eyes. It was real. It was actually happening. What happens now? They'll be processed and transported to the federal courthouse in Wilmington for initial appearance. Given the nature of the charges and the evidence, I expect they'll be held pending arraignment. You should expect contact from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They'll want your cooperation as a witness. Of course, whatever you need. One more thing, Mr. Patterson. We found records at the warehouse indicating this operation has been running for approximately 4 months. Based on preliminary estimates, we believe they've diverted and sold over $300,000 in disaster relief supplies. $300,000. While people in destroyed homes waited for help that never came. Your documentation was crucial to this case, Walsh continued. Without it, we might never have uncovered the scope of the theft. I needed to know the truth. You did the right thing. Someone from our office will be in touch within 24 hours. In the meantime, I'd advise you to secure your home and consider how you want to handle this with your children. The children. Jake and Olivia, who had no idea their mother had just been arrested for federal crimes. Thank you, Agent Walsh. We'll be in touch. The line went dead. I stood in the hallway, phone in hand, trying to process what I'd just heard. Emily was in custody. Tyler was in custody. It was over. Except it wasn't over. Not really. This was just the beginning of whatever came next. The arraignment, the trial, the media coverage when this went public. The moment I had to sit down with Jake and Olivia and explain why their mother wouldn't be coming home. I went back to my office, closed the door, and called James Whitley. He answered on the second ring. David, I was expecting your call. You heard? FBI courtesy notification about an hour ago. Federal charges, theft of government property, conspiracy, wire fraud. They're not playing around. Walsh said they found evidence going back 4 months. $300,000 in stolen supplies. James let out a low whistle. That's significant. With amounts like that, we're looking at serious prison time if she's convicted. Probably 5 to 10 years, minimum. 5 to 10 years. I tried to imagine it. Emily in a federal prison, Jake and Olivia visiting their mother behind glass. Or not visiting at all. What do I do now? First, you don't talk to anyone about this except me and law enforcement. The media is going to get wind of this soon. Federal arrest records are public. When they do, you refer all questions to me. Second, we need to meet tomorrow to discuss how this affects the divorce proceedings. Emily's criminal charges are separate from the custody case, but they're going to have significant impact. She won't get custody. No, James said quietly. She won't. But we still need to do this, right? For the kids' sake. For the kids' sake. Everything came back to that. I have to pick them up from school in an hour, I said. Soccer practice, then dinner, homework, bedtime, normal Tuesday. Except their mother's been arrested. They don't know that yet. When are you going to tell them? I looked out my office window at the construction site below. Workers moving steel beams, pouring concrete, building something from nothing. Tonight, I said. After dinner, I'll tell them tonight. The news broke on a Thursday morning, 3 days after the arrests. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop, working remotely. I told my boss I needed a few days to handle a family emergency, which was both true and a massive understatement, when my phone started buzzing. Text messages from numbers I didn't recognize, emails from reporters, a notification that I'd been tagged in a Facebook post, The local NBC affiliate had run the story as their morning lead. Federal authorities arrest 6 in hurricane relief theft ring. Emily's booking photo was right there on the screen, her face pale and drawn, her eyes red-rimmed. Tyler's photo next to hers, then Gerald Voss, then 3 others I'd seen at the warehouse but whose names I didn't know. My phone rang. A number with a 704 area code. Mr. Patterson, this is Angela Reeves from Channel 9 News. We're doing a story on the relief supply theft arrests, and we understand your wife Emily Patterson was one of those charged. Would you be willing to… I hung up. It rang again immediately. Different number. I sent it to voicemail. The thing about living in a place like Charlotte, especially in one of these suburban neighborhoods where everyone knows everyone else's business, is that news travels fast. The HOA Facebook group was probably already on fire. The parents at Jake and Olivia's schools would be talking. Emily's book club friends, her yoga class, the other volunteers at Carolina Cares who had no idea what she'd been doing. I'd known this was coming. Agent Walsh had warned me that once arrests were made, the media would pick it up. Federal charges involving disaster relief theft, FEMA funds, hurricane victims. It was too big a story to stay quiet. I just hadn't expected it to feel like this. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my mother. David, I just saw the news. What is happening? Call me. Then my sister. Oh my God, are you okay? Are the kids okay? Then a number I didn't recognize. Your wife is a thief and a whore. Hope she rots. I turned the phone face down on the table. The kids were at school. I'd driven them that morning, same as always, because I didn't know what else to do. Keep things normal for as long as possible. Jake had asked where Mom was. She usually made breakfast, and I'd told him she had to go out of town for a few days. He'd shrugged and poured himself cereal. They didn't know yet. About the affair, about the theft, about the arrests. They knew something was wrong. Kids always know, but they didn't know the specifics. I was going to have to tell them. Soon. Before someone else did. The doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman in a blazer holding a microphone, a man with a camera behind her. Channel 9, based on the logo on the microphone. I didn't answer. They rang again. Knocked. I heard the woman say something to the cameraman, then footsteps on the front porch, moving toward the side of the house. I closed all the blinds. James Whitley called around noon. Have you seen the coverage? He asked. Hard to miss. It's going to get worse before it gets better. The federal prosecutor's office is holding a press conference at 2 o'clock. They're going to lay out the charges, talk about the scope of the operation, probably mention the dollar amounts involved. Great. David, listen to me. You need to prepare yourself for what's coming. This is a federal case involving disaster relief funds and hurricane victims. People are going to be angry. The media is going to want to talk to you. Your neighbors, your coworkers, people you don't even know. They're all going to have opinions. I know. Do you have somewhere you can take the kids for a few days? Somewhere out of town, away from the cameras? I hadn't thought of that. My parents live in Greensboro. That might be a good idea. Let things calm down a bit before you have to explain everything to them. I rubbed my eyes. I'd barely slept in 3 days. I can't just run away. It's not running away. It's protecting your children from a media circus they didn't ask for and don't deserve. He was right. I knew he was right. There's something else? James said. Emily's attorney contacted me this morning. She wants to talk to you. No. I told him you'd say that. But David, she's going to keep trying. She's out on bond. Her parents posted it, and she's going to want to see the kids. My hand tightened on the phone. She's out? Bond hearing was yesterday afternoon. Federal magistrate set it at $100,000. Her parents put up their house. Emily was out. Walking around. Free. I thought about her sitting in that warehouse with Tyler, laughing while they repackaged stolen supplies. I thought about the families in Wilmington and Charlotte who needed those supplies, who'd lost everything to the hurricane and were waiting for help that never came because Emily and her lover had sold it to the highest bidder. She doesn't get to see them, I said. That's going to be complicated. Legally, she still has parental rights. The custody arrangement we filed is temporary, and she can challenge it. She stole from disaster victims, James. She committed federal crimes. I know. And that's going to work in your favor long term. But right now, this minute, she's their mother, and she hasn't been convicted of anything yet. A judge isn't going to terminate her parental rights based on charges alone. I wanted to put my fist through the wall. What do I do? For now? Nothing. Don't talk to her. Don't let her in the house. If she shows up, don't engage. Document everything. If she calls, if she texts, if she comes by, save it all. And talk to the kids. Today. Before they hear it from someone else. I picked them up from school early. The office staff gave me looks. They'd seen the news, obviously. But nobody said anything. Jake came out of his classroom looking confused. Olivia was chattering about something that happened at recess until she saw my face. What's wrong? She asked. We need to go home and talk. The drive back was silent except for the radio, which I'd left on low. A commercial for a furniture store. A snippet of a pop song. Then the news update. Federal authorities say 6 people are facing charges in connection with the theft of more than $300,000 in hurricane relief supplies. I turned it off. At home, I sat them down in the living room. Jake on the couch, Olivia in the armchair, both of them watching me with wide eyes. Your mom is in trouble, I said. That was how I started. Not with the affair, they didn't need to know about that, not yet, maybe not ever, but with the facts they needed to understand. She made some bad choices. She took things that didn't belong to her, supplies that were supposed to go to people who lost their homes in the hurricane. The police arrested her, and now she's going to have to go to court. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Is Mom going to jail? I don't know yet. Maybe. She did something very serious. Jake was staring at the floor, his jaw tight. He looked older than 12 in that moment. That's why she's been gone? Yes. Where is she now? At her parents' house, but she's not going to be living here anymore. Because of what she did? Yes. Olivia was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, that everything would be fine, but I couldn't lie to them. Not about this. I know this is scary, I said. I know it doesn't make sense, but I need you both to understand that your mom made her own choices and now she has to deal with the consequences. This isn't your fault. It's not because of anything you did. Jake looked up at me. Did she steal a lot? Yes. From people who needed it? Yes. He nodded slowly, processing. Then, good. I hope she goes to jail. The venom in his voice startled me. Olivia gasped. Jake? She stole from people who lost everything, Dad. That's evil. I didn't correct him. The trial took 14 months to reach its conclusion. 14 months of depositions, motions, plea negotiations that fell apart, and finally, a 3-week trial in federal court in Wilmington that made regional news every single night. Emily took a plea deal in the end. The prosecutor had offered it early: plead guilty to conspiracy and theft of government property, testify against Tyler and Gerald, and they'd recommend 8 years instead of the 15 she was facing. She refused at first. Her attorney kept insisting they could fight it, that my evidence was circumstantial, that a jury might be sympathetic to a mother of 2. Then the prosecutor showed her the additional evidence the FBI had uncovered: bank records proving she'd personally profited nearly $80,000. Text messages between her and Tyler discussing which relief shipments to target. Video footage from a gas station showing her loading supplies while wearing a Carolina Cares shirt. She took the deal. Tyler Brennan got 12 years. Gerald Voss got 10. The 3 buyers got various sentences ranging from 3 to 7 years. Carolina Cares lost its FEMA partnership and eventually dissolved, putting 23 legitimate employees out of work. Collateral damage from Emily's greed. The divorce was finalized 6 months before her sentencing. I got full custody. She got supervised visitation rights that she couldn't exercise from federal prison. The house, the cars, the retirement accounts. I kept everything. James had argued successfully that Emily had forfeited her claim to marital assets by using them to fund criminal activity. She didn't fight it. By the end, she didn't fight anything. The day of her sentencing, I sat in the back of the courtroom. I hadn't planned to go. James said I didn't need to be there. But something pulled me. Maybe I needed to see it end. Maybe I needed to watch the final consequence land. Emily stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, her hands shaking. She'd lost weight. Her hair had gone gray at the roots. She looked 20 years older than the woman who'd kissed my cheek and hummed while getting ready to steal from hurricane victims. The judge asked if she wanted to make a statement. She turned and looked at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry to the families I stole from. I'm sorry to the organization I betrayed. I'm sorry to my children who deserved better. And I'm sorry to my husband who—" She stopped. Started again. "Who tried to love someone who didn't exist?" The judge sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison, as recommended. She'd serve at least 6.5 with good behavior. I walked out of the courthouse into bright October sunshine. It had been almost exactly 2 years since that Tuesday I came home early and found those text messages. 2 years since my life split into before and after. Jake is 14 now. He plays basketball, gets good grades, has a girlfriend he's too embarrassed to talk about. He hasn't asked about his mother in 8 months. When people at school bring it up, and they still do sometimes, he shuts down the conversation. She made her choices, he says. The same words I told him that day in the living room. I worry about him, about the anger he carries, the way he's built walls around the hurt. We do therapy, both of them do, individual and family sessions, but some damage runs too deep for therapy to reach quickly. Olivia is 11. She writes letters to Emily that she never sends. I find them sometimes, tucked in her desk drawer. "Dear Mom, I got an A on my science project. I wish you could have seen it. Love, Olivia." She's softer than Jake, more willing to forgive. Or maybe just more willing to hope. I don't know which is healthier. We sold the house in Charlotte. Too many memories, too many neighbors who'd seen the news coverage and formed their opinions. We moved to Asheville, where nobody knows our story unless we tell them. I took a job with a smaller construction firm, better hours, more time with the kids. I date occasionally, nothing serious. The women I meet eventually ask about my ex-wife, and I have to decide how much to tell them. The affair, the theft, the federal prison sentence. It's not exactly first date conversation. Mostly I focus on being present for Jake and Olivia, making breakfast, helping with homework, attending games and recitals. The ordinary work of single parenthood. The life I should have been living all along, except now I'm doing it alone. Sometimes, late at night when the kids are asleep, I think about Emily sitting in a cell in West Virginia. I wonder if she thinks about us, if she regrets the choices she made or just regrets getting caught. I wonder if she ever really loved me, or if the whole marriage was a performance I was too trusting to see through. I don't have answers. I'm not sure I ever will. What I know is this. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal cleanly. It leaves scars. Jake's walls, Olivia's unsent letters, my own hesitation to let anyone close. Those are the scars Emily left behind. But we're healing anyway. Slowly. Imperfectly. Some days are harder than others. Some days Jake comes home angry about nothing and everything. Some days Olivia cries at dinner and can't explain why. Some days I look at the empty chair where Emily used to sit and feel the weight of her absence. And some days we're okay. We laugh at stupid jokes. We have movie nights. We make plans for the future that don't include her. Those days are becoming more frequent. There's a lesson in all of this, I suppose. Something about trust and verification, about paying attention to the small signs before they become catastrophic ones. About how people can live double lives right in front of you if you're not looking closely enough. But the real lesson, the one I try to teach Jake and Olivia, is simpler than that. Actions have consequences. Choices matter. The person you decide to be when nobody's watching defines who you actually are. Emily chose greed over integrity. She chose stolen moments with a lover over the family she'd built. She chose to rob people who'd lost everything so she could fund a fantasy life that was never real to begin with. Those were her choices. Not mine. Not the kids. Hers. And now she's living with the consequences while we build something new from the wreckage she left behind. Is it fair? I don't know. Fair is a concept for children's games and moral philosophy. Real life is messier than that. What I know is that Jake and Olivia are good kids who are learning that the world can be cruel and people can disappoint you, but you keep going anyway. You build something better. You choose differently than the people who hurt you. That's not revenge. It's not justice exactly. It's just survival. And growth. And the slow, painful work of becoming whole again after someone you loved breaks you into pieces. Last week, Olivia asked if we could visit her mother. We were having dinner, spaghetti, Jake's favorite, the same meal I made the night before everything fell apart. And she just said it. Casual. Like she was asking if we could get ice cream after school. Can we go see Mom? Jake's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I set down my water glass carefully. Why do you want to do that? I asked. Olivia shrugged. I want to see her. Make sure she's okay. She's not okay, Jake said. She's in prison. I know that. Olivia's voice got defensive. But she's still our mom. I looked at my daughter, 11 years old, trying to hold on to something that was already gone, and felt my heart break a little. We can talk about it, I said. Let me think about it. Jake shook his head and went back to eating. The subject was closed for him. Maybe forever. But Olivia looked at me with hope in her eyes, and I realized that part of moving forward means letting the kids make their own choices about their relationship with their mother. Even if those choices hurt. Even if I think they're mistakes. They're not my mistakes to make anymore. I don't know if we'll visit Emily. I don't know if Jake will ever forgive her, or if Olivia's forgiveness is wise, or just the desperate hope of a child who wants her mother back. I don't know if I did the right thing, turning her in, documenting everything, building the case that put her in prison and took her away from our children. What I know is that I couldn't live with the alternative. I couldn't watch her steal from disaster victims and pretend I didn't know. I couldn't let her destroy our family while I stood by and did nothing. So I made my choice. And now I live with it, the same way she lives with hers. The difference is I can sleep at night. Most nights anyway. And in the end, maybe that's all any of us can hope for. To make the choices we can live with. To protect the people we love. And to build something honest from the ruins of beautiful lies. The truth did set me free. It just cost more than I expected. But freedom always does.